Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the report that the House of Commons may actually have come to the point where they agree that Nadine Dorries is taking the mickey by not actually resigning, as she promised, but also doing no work as an MP. And it appears that there is a rather ancient rule, which means they could be able to do something about it. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So let's recap the situation with our Nads. She has not attended Parliament for one full annual cycle now, or at the very least, she hasn't spoken or voted. It's not always easy to tell if she's attended. You know, the last time she attended to the point where you could tell she attended, I believe, was just before last summer's recess. So that's like a whole year now. However, it's not even like she's been busy in her constituency, because there's been plenty of MPs aren't at Westminster very much, even some ministers. But that's because they're busy in their constituencies trying to drum up support because their seat's in a bit of trouble for the election. But as far as may be ascertained, like, she's not held any surgeries in her local constituency for years. So she's not serving her constituents either locally or in Westminster. So now the chair of the Common Standards Committee, Bryant, has said that he wants to force her to either attend Parliament or resign, as she said she would. Remember, she said she would be resigning with immediate effect, and that was on June the 9th. It was 2 months ago, and she's still not formally resigned. It's like dealing with a teenager, isn't it? Yeah, I'll do it in a couple of minutes. Not sure she quite understands the meaning of immediate effect. Of course, she argues that she only delayed the actual resignation. I was completely going to resign, and then I decided I wanted some answers from Downing Street about why I'm not going to be a baroness. But this is a nonsense. Not only had she already been absent from her duties for a good 10 months before she even announced her resignation. Everyone knows why she's not going into the House of Lords. Everyone knows that. It was widely reported that she either had to resign as an MP to take up her seat in the Lords or not get the peerage at all. You cannot be a member of both houses at once. Now, there was a suggestion that they might be able to defer the appointments to the House of Lords. So the idea was that these MPs, Nadine Dorries and a few others, would carry on as MPs so as not to trigger damaging by-elections for the party, stand down for the next election, and then enter the House of Lords. But the House of Lords Selection Committee, Appointments Committee it's actually called, said, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. You either have to resign as an MP to take up this position. Like, you had a certain amount of time, it was something like 6 months. Something like that. You had a certain amount of time, which was not going to allow them to defer it all the way to the election. Now, I knew that. I knew it. I'd seen it reported in the mainstream media. I did a video about it. She must have known it as well. So what happened? Well, it transpires she believed Boris Johnson, who told her that the application would just keep being resubmitted. So Boris Johnson had apparently told her, well, what will happen is they'll come back and say, no, you can't do this. And you just resubmit the application, just keep doing it until the election. But it's like, in order for her to have believed that, she had to have believed Boris Johnson over the media reports of what the House of Lords Appointments Committee was saying. Why didn't she go to someone from the House of Lords Appointments Committee and say, can I get the lowdown on this? Why did she believe Boris Johnson? But anyway, that's her story. She wrote to Downing Street to demand answers. Now, if I were Rishi Sunak, I would write back to her simply saying, the reason your peerage was removed is because you believed the country's most famous and accomplished liar. Get wrecked. But anyway, what's this old rule about? Because we know that there's no current rule which forces an MP to even pretend to do their job, because she's not the first one who just doesn't do anything. Now, apparently it dates back to 1801 and laid down some attendance requirements. According to the Financial Times article I was reading on it, it has been used. In 1846, apparently, an MP by the name of William Smith O'Brien refused to serve on the Railway Committee. And so they locked him up in the clock tower. Oh my goodness, why did we ever stop doing that? That's how we should be dealing with absentee and wayward MPs. Lock them up in the tower. Not that Bryant is suggesting that we lock Nads up in the tower. He is suggesting the rule be enforced with a more modern punishment, a 10-day common suspension if she doesn't attend Parliament. That would, of course, result in a recall petition, Andrew, it would string the whole process out. Like, being realistic, if you think about the timing of this, nothing can be done now because Parliament's not in session. once it is in session in early September, it could, MPs would have to direct the Standards Committee to start this. So you'd need to put a motion before Parliament. Then Parliament could ask the Standards Committee to issue NADS with a formal notice to attend. And they'd have to give us some time, presumably. After that, the Standards Committee would need to meet about it, then put their decision to impose a 10-day suspension to a vote of all MPs. Assuming MPs agree to go along with this, and I don't know whether they would or they would not, then the recall petition itself takes 6 weeks. Then you've got a few weeks to issue the writ for the by-election. The by-election itself would probably not happen until late November at the earliest. Still, we don't actually know if she is intended to resign at all now. She might not be. So that would still be the quickest way to get rid of her. But I suspect she plans to resign just before the conference season kicks off, to maximise publicity for her book and to cause maximum disruption to the Tory conference. It's also not clear to me if Chris Bryant would have enough support from MPs. For example, there's no need for a 200-year-old rule. MPs can decide their own rules. If a clear majority of MPs decides that Nadine Dorries is in contempt of Parliament, then they can ask the Standards Committee to basically enforce something. It's really that simple. A majority of MPs can do what they like. But as it seems to be exclusively Conservative MPs who fail to do anything, like Nadine Dorries not turning up. Boris Johnson, remember, when he was an MP, he wasn't turning up to Parliament, except a couple of times to talk about himself. Or the former Attorney General Geoffrey Cox, he's rarely anywhere to be seen in his constituency or in Parliament. He's busy off in the Cayman Islands explaining to people how they can fiddle their taxes. Gets paid millions for that. Doesn't do much as an MP. So there are always some Tory MPs who want the position but spend almost all of their time on their own outside pursuits, usually involving big sacks of cash. So we may find this is another case of Chris Bryant trying to draw attention to an egregious abuse and doing something to restore a bit of credibility to Parliament, but will enough Tory MPs agree that action should be taken? It is actually possible, because it could be argued that it's doing the Conservatives' reputation no good at all to allow Dorries to behave in this way, particularly in her constituency. At some point, that constituency is going to go to the polls. If Nadine Dorries resigns, and the Tory leadership and other Tory MPs have got no control over that, if she does resign, there's going to be a by-election. Now, the Tories could lose that. They really shouldn't, but they could lose it. So you would think the Tories would want to do something to boost their appeal, at least in that constituency. And it could be argued that the Tories would get a bit of a boost if they force her hand, if they are seen to be putting the interests of the constituents of Mid Bedfordshire first and forcing Nadine Dorries to either do her job or leave. So actually, it could well be that something does come out of this. But I would still say it would be quicker, more effective, and definitely funnier to lock her up in the tower. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.